A whole lot of talented and experienced Buckeyes gone. Who will step up? We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football, Ohio State Buckeyes live for a 315th time. We hope you appreciate what we have here. Tony Gerdeman right next to me, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Buckeye Weekly is the podcast. Make it a regular go-to for your Ohio State football content. And of course, Steve Hellwagon, senior Big Ten writer, Bucknuts 247 Sports. Hey guys, how we doing?
Doing great.
Doing well.
Please like the video, folks. Before you get started, you already know you will like what we have to say. So please hit the like button, subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. Consider these super chat contributions. We would appreciate that as well. So you were in the room with Ryan Day. I listened to it this morning. I found it to be rather beyond what the normal fare is. Quarterbacks, putting those guys through the ringer as much as possible. He admitted to that not being feasible, but they do their best. He compared it to other sports and the reps that you get playing other sports. And of course, football being a limited sport, both in practice and in number of games. We don't realize necessarily how limited these guys are from an experience standpoint. And when it all shakes out, of course, these quarterbacks are even. But what else is he going to say about that, Tony?
Well, I think one of the interesting things is that he did admit that before the spring game, Lincoln Kienholz maybe was slightly ahead. But then the next day, Julian Sayin goes and has the better game. So back to square one. And I think they'll stay there. But, yeah, I thought the talk about the lack of games is interesting when you compare it to all of the other sports where, AAU, you can play Steve watches like 6 games in a day and then go do the same thing tomorrow because you're there all weekend. And you play so many more games in every other sport, basically, other than football. And so you can't simulate it. I mean, all you can do is try to simulate it, and it's not the same. And they've talked about how they even had some virtual reality headsets that they've tried before that, aren't, they don't work as well as you'd like, and they'll eventually get better and things like that. But it's still the actual gameplay is what every quarterback needs. That's why you go back to the whole Bill Parcells thing, saying you can't draft a quarterback who's only started 1 year, and he had like a certain number of starts that he wanted his quarterbacks to have in college, or else they weren't even going to be on his draft board. And you see a lot of that pan out with the play in the NFL, whether it's Mitch Trubisky or Dwayne Haskins, where they struggle because they only had 1 season of starting. And so, yeah, the importance of that, it's the most important position in sports. And really, you can only get better at it by playing the game, and there aren't enough games to get as good as you'd like.
I thought the comments yesterday were very insightful from Coach about the quarterback situation. As you guys laid out, Coach says that he gets into them pretty hard when they miss assignments or they, make the wrong throw or the wrong read or whatever, because the games are kind of unforgiving. I mean, it's either you do or you don't. As Luke Fickell used to say, it is a very evaluation friendly industry. Either you did it or you didn't. And so I think that he puts them through their paces during practice, no doubt about it. I thought, as he said, that Lincoln Kienholz may have had the better spring on the whole leading up to the spring game, but Julian Sayin was probably better on that one day in the spring game, although Kienholz did come on and play pretty well after the first quarter. So to me, I look at it that this thing's a virtual dead heat going into the summer and the start of preseason camp. Everybody can assume that Julian Sayin, because he's the higher rated guy or whatever, better ceiling or, higher ceiling or whatever, however way you want to put it, could have the inside track. And I got to tell you, the way he played on those first 3 series was awe-inspiring. I mean, if he's going to play like that against some of the better teams on the schedule, then you like his chances to be the guy. But so we'll see. I'm interested, obviously, to see how this thing carries over into the fall and to see what it's going to take for one of them to separate from the other.
Absolutely. Akili Smith comes to mind as maybe still holding the record for the least number of starts in college to be selected in the first round of the NFL draft. And he was like a top 3 to 5 selection by the Bengals. Did not work out, to say the least.
Speaking of the Bengals, they drafted this Shamar Stewart, 300-pound defensive end who had a lifetime 3 sacks or something at Texas, wherever he was. I mean, there's a reason why you're the Cincinnati Bengals, I guess. I don't know.
But again, potential measurements, the testing, and he was close to being the number 1 player coming out of high school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ran like a 4.6 at the combine and had 1.5 sacks each of his 3 years in college. And that's going to be the guy that replaces Trey Hendrickson for you, Steve.
Right. Well, not 17, 19. Not for me, bro. The Cincinnati Bengals, as we all know, are a cheap bastardization of the Cleveland Browns. So there you go.
Yes,
emphasis on cheap and bastardization.
Just kidding, everybody. I love the Bengals. I mean, I root for them for Joe Burrow when they're not playing the Browns. So there you go. I rooted for them in the Super Bowl against my buddy Jeff Rapp and our friend Patrick Murphy, the Lammies, as we like to call them. So I did root for the Bengals that day.
Paul Brown has set that approach in motion a long, long time ago, and they have never veered from it. Yes, cheapest franchise in the NFL, the Bengals. Robert, good to see you. Mika, Doreen's coming in fast and hard with all sorts of comments. We appreciate that, encouraging people to join the membership here at the Voice of College Football and like and subscribe and do all those good things. And your contributions are appreciated. CJ Hicks, the comparisons were made between CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles and what Sonny Styles has accomplished and the transition. And I thought that Ryan Day did a nice job of what people can relate to is to a certain extent would be, yes, running free and going after ball carriers versus being engaged immediately and having 300-pounders with your hands all over you and trying to make plays and different sorts of plays or just making an impact on a play rather than making the play itself. But I think to CJ Hicks' credit, another thing Ryan Day said was, of course, that he stuck around where you would think a guy that had that kind of recruiting prowess coming out of high school may be looking to say, you know what, I can play this position and I can do it somewhere else.
Yeah, this is a guy throughout his entire recruiting he was all Buckeye. I think he was earned the moniker Captain Buckeye because he was also leading the charge in recruiting while he was committed to Ohio State. And it has been fascinating to watch him, the first 2 years really not doing much, didn't even play defense at all, didn't see defensive snaps at all as a true freshman. And then last spring, he was the number one will linebacker, but it was Sonny Styles who eventually took that job over. And then now to be one of 5 defensive ends and to want to stick around. But, I've said this before, every time we were at interviews on, post-practice interviews, we'd get into the practice facility on the on-field there, and CJ Hicks would be talking with Matt Patricia, or he's working with Larry Johnson. Like he was never just doing nothing. He was always working with a coach or other pass rushers trying to get ready for this season. And I think one of the things that helps him is he did it in high school. And what he never really did in high school was play linebacker, because even when he was a linebacker as a senior, he was rushing the passer a lot. Like he was on the edge and just getting after the quarterback or blitzing, and really it was unfair to watch. So I'm fascinated to see what happens for him this year. I think one of the interesting things in the spring game that I saw is they had him at left defensive end, which generally had him dealing with a tight end and a defensive end and maybe a chipping running back that would stay over there. So you would view him as kind of the weak side defensive end that would just rush the passer and, backside, bring a running back down. In the spring game, they just threw in everything at him, I guess, sort of a sink or swim type of thing. And, you go deal with the tight end, go deal with the right tackle, and see how that goes for you, because it's not ever going to be easy. And they always, as Ryan Day said yesterday, they try to make practice harder than the games. And I think that's one of the things they were doing with their defensive ends this spring.
Yeah, I think CJ Hicks has got the potential to help him. Obviously, they're off the edge. They also, as we talked probably last week, boosted that position as well with Bo Atkinson, the defensive end from North Carolina, who's coming in. So they probably have close to a 3 deep there at defensive end, and plenty of candidates for those spots. And we'll see, what packages they decide that they want to use CJ Hicks in. Is he just a third down guy, or is he an every down guy? I guess we'll have to wait and see what they want to do, or what kind of wrinkles that Matt Patricia has in mind for using, a guy that is still kind of waiting to fully tap into that immense potential that everybody thought that he had coming out of high school. It just hasn't clicked in for him yet. And so I guess, we'll see this fall if it finally does work out for CJ Hicks. But, nobody wants to do it more than he does. And we'll see what that looks like, I guess, this fall.
Tony has reached GOAT status, according to Robert. Very good. And again, Doreen, thank you so much for being here. There's actually talk out there, Doreen, that the Michigan contingent is going to steal you away as a fan. That's what I'm hearing from our Michigan fans, that they have pulled hard in their direction toward your emotions and brought you over with some sympathies on the Michigan side now that you've gone to the spring game up there. So we don't like hearing that. So hopefully those are just rumors and just wishes. All right. I found this to be interesting because I'm sure you guys were filling in the blanks here. So when Ryan Day was talking about player relationships with the coaches and that he surveys all the players, has interviews after spring practice, talks about their relationship with the coaches, rate them on a scale of 1 to 5, and specifically talking about Matt Patricia and Tyler Bowen, he slipped in that has not always been the case in the past, and also even kind of threw in an assumption that the people in the room would know who he was talking about, if I caught that correctly.
Don't want to cast aspersions at anybody here, but probably a good bet. He's talking about his friend who's now the DC at Penn State. Otherwise, exiled people that they got rid of. They didn't bring back Tony Alford. And Tony Alford was kind of an acquired taste. He had a way, to be kind of a smart ass at times. And, you kind of had to know how to take him, I guess. So maybe that applied to him too. Although deep down, I thought he was a pretty good dude. So even though he's now at the University of, but, so what? I don't know if he was talking about those guys or anybody else that he's kicked off the island.
I mean, you could throw Justin Fry in there as well, even though all of the offensive linemen we've ever talked to have always, raved about Justin Fry. But yeah, it was interesting. And it's, not just the assistants, but like there are 2 other full-time assistant offensive line coaches, and getting feedback on everybody. And it's important that the coaches that you have are, you don't have to be beloved, but like you also don't want to hate the people that are trying to get the most out of you, because that's not a way that's going to help. Also, if the players aren't happy with the coach, the assistant coach, how do you think recruits are going to feel about this person as well? So you can be the best coach in the world, but if you're not personable, you're only going to go so far. You probably need somebody like Tom Brady to be your quarterback, for instance, to be able to reach your full potential as a coach if nobody likes you. So yeah, it is interesting where, I don't know, Mark, you seem to want to accuse some people. So why don't you throw some names out there?
I think Steve already has.
Well, we're just spitballing.
And one was certainly one that, our friend at Penn State. That was the first name that came to mind for me.
Yeah, they've had abrasive there in the past. There was a guy 20, 25 years ago, John Tenuta, who was just an abrasive like a cactus, to deal with, very prickly. I don't think Knowles was quite that bad, but Knowles, there wasn't a lot of screw around in Knowles' persona. It was kind of like, and yet, he did a lot of things that were player friendly, like that silver bullet of the day type thing. I think players got a kick out of that when they were recognized as the best defensive player on the field that day. I think that was kind of a cool thing. So maybe it is him, maybe it isn't him. I don't know. I mean, to me, he had real dry sense of humor. And, again, kind of like I said with Tony Alford, you kind of had to take him one way or the other with that.
Well, and, talking with the players at the combine after this all broke, and they're all like, he'll always be my defensive coordinator, had no issues with him. Although there was, I don't remember if it was Ty Hamilton or somebody else. It may have been Ty Hamilton. He's like, yeah, no comment on that. So, like, he didn't want to talk about Jim Knowles leaving. He didn't want to share his thoughts on Jim Knowles leaving for Penn State. But one other aspect to that is when you are the defensive coordinator now, you don't have a position to coach. So you're not necessarily as close with players as you normally would have been when you also had a position to coach. And now that they've got all of their bases covered and Jim Knowles just kind of, or whomever just oversees everything. But the one thing that, again, when we're there after practice with interviews, like Matt Patricia's always talking to somebody. He's always working with somebody. He's always, put like almost like picking somebody up, putting them over there and putting their leg like this. And, just always working with them on little stuff. So he's been very hands-on. And, I think, the reaction and the feedback for him has been good.
Folks, we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We do this each and every Wednesday with Steve and with Tony. Wednesdays, 11 a.m. Eastern time. So bring a friend or two or 50 with you and talk it up out there in Buckeye circles. All right. Yakov has this for us. Appreciate you, Yakov. What if Keith Byers was healthy for the 1985 season? That team went 9-3, of course, as basically every team under Earl Bruce did. They lost to Illinois 31-28 on the road. Then they came down the stretch, as you guys well know, after the big Iowa win at 8-1, and then lost a horrific game against Wisconsin at the Shoe, 12-7 before the Michigan loss. And I would have to go back and see when Keith Byers was actually healthy versus not healthy. So it's not like he missed the season. Still gained like 800 yards or something like that. He just wasn't himself, and his play was compromised, and he was also not in the games as much because of it was a foot, wasn't it?
Yeah. That was my senior year of high school, and it's funny that Iowa game. We had a scrimmage. I think I've told the story before. I was at Circleville. We were playing at Bloom Carroll in a scrimmage on Saturday morning, and we're driving back and we're listening to the game coming back on Route 22 from Lancaster to Circleville. And everybody ran to their house, took a shower, and we all hopped in the car and we headed to Ohio State. And we're listening to the game on the radio, and our goal was to get inside the stadium. Well, at halftime, they stopped taking tickets. So we walked right in and watched a lot of the second half there at the stadium, ended up on the field with all the students and fans after the game. So it was a red letter moment, even though, he wasn't a big part of that season or a part of that team. And I think you have to figure, as you laid it out, some close losses there. I think Michigan was 27-17, the game there at Michigan, I believe. Do they go on and win the Big Ten instead? Perhaps I suppose that's possible. Could they have won the national championship that year? I suppose that's possible as well. I'm not sure who won it in '85, but probably in Oklahoma or I don't know. There was a BYU in there somewhere. They may have been '86. I don't know.
84. BYU. Yeah, that was Oklahoma, Penn State, both undefeated, played in Oklahoma had a loss to Miami Miami had a loss. They were playing in the Sugar Bowl. But anyway, Penn State undefeated. Oklahoma, one loss. Oklahoma beat them in the Orange Bowl to win the national championship.
Yeah, crazy type, scenario. And so certainly it's a possibility. I mean, they would have had to go to the Rose Bowl as opposed to get to play one of the, the unbeaten team or whatever, under that system. So then probably could have, given rise to a split championship or something. You never know, but who knows? Been a lot of those over the years, what ifs and different things. And that's why, every 10 years when they do come along, you have to really enjoy the championship seasons that you've been given. And we're getting them on an average, one every 10.67 years or so right now. So just be happy. And as I told my wife yesterday, take your win. Just take your win. You win. Take your win.
I was just
go ahead, Tony.
I was just looking to see Keith Byers played 4 games that year with 3 starts. The starts were at Minnesota, at Michigan, and against BYU.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was about to say, when I'm wrong, I admit I'm wrong. I watched every game of that season, every play of that season, but memory fades. I had a different recollection of Keith Byers' season. So he only ran for 208 yards. I thought he played a lot more than that, but just played the 3 starts.
They certainly beat, Illinois and Wisconsin with him. And I think it's up in the air, at Michigan against what was a really good Michigan team. What happens there? That's the big one right there. That's probably the toughest game, probably tougher than whoever Michigan went on and played. I presume it was Michigan went on and played in the Rose Bowl, but
they played Nebraska in the Fiesta Bowl.
Okay, who played? Was it Iowa?
Iowa played UCLA in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
got stomped.
Oof. Yeah,
as Iowa always does when they go to the Rose Bowl. Keith Byers played against Michigan, right, Tony?
He did. He carried the ball 12 times for 37 yards, 1 touchdown.
Yeah, I recall him not being himself, and that Michigan team finished number 2 in the country, although they did not win the Big Ten championship.
Crazy.
Good
Jim
stuff,
Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, 16 of 19 for 230 yards at 3 touchdowns.
Captain comeback.
Anyway, new topic.
What is our new topic?
You just got to tip your cap to that guy. What can you do? Hey, they got an offensive lineman from the portal, and this kind of dovetails. The one thing they need is a defensive tackle. And so far in the aftermarket spring portal, they've gotten, as we said, Bo Atkinson, the defensive end, and this offensive lineman, 6'5" or 6'6", 330 pounds, Justin Terry, originally from Pickerington. And so they knew all about him. They knew who he was. And he went to West Virginia for 1 year. West Virginia had the coaching change, obviously, going from Neil Brown to Rich Rod. And Terry was in the transfer portal. And Ohio State snaps him up. They didn't want him last year, coming out of Pickerington. But now a year later, they want him after he essentially, I assume, redshirted at West Virginia. So that's kind of an interesting pickup. But yesterday, Ryan Day talked about how they are definitely still looking at defensive tackles, but will not take one just to take one. That it's got to be somebody who's as good or better than what they already have in the fold. I mean, you've got Caden McDonald, Nedrick Houston are the starters, and then it really drops off. You've got some people behind them, Tywan Malone and some young guys, but they haven't seen what they like yet out of that defensive tackle spot.
And really, unless a graduate transfer jumps in there, I don't think they're going to find anything that is better. I guess the good thing is now that if you bring somebody in who is of equal talent, you're not going to scare anybody into the portal. Like, I think one of the concerns initially was if you bring somebody in that is the same as what you've got, you might lose 2 guys to the portal that are like, well, you're trying to get my spot up. I'm out of here. So I guess that fear is gone, but adding another guy that you don't know can play is not really the answer there. In terms of one of the things that Ryan Day did talk about as well yesterday was the need to bring in more developmental players. And I asked him about building the roster and how many scholarships they're going to be at. He said right now the plan is 90 scholarships. The 105 is going to go up because the judge in the House case is like, we're not doing 105 just yet. We're going to have to grandfather the players in or slowly get down to 105. So they'll probably be back around 120 this year. But those, that's just going to be 15 more walk-ons. But a guy like Justin Terry, he wasn't offered out of high school, but I wonder if he would have been. If he's one of these, now when they're looking at the developmental guys like a Bod Penn Miller, who was a quarterback in high school, but is going to be a receiver at Ohio State, where you have to have some guys that understand that they're going to take a little bit of time to develop and that they have that patience and that commitment. I think that's important with the transfer in the transfer portal era, where you're going to be losing guys. But if you've got guys that are like hunkered down and know it's going to take a little bit of time, then that helps bolster the roster when you lose guys that want something right now.
How often is Ohio State signing the 49th rated player in the state?
Not often for sure. Unless that state is Texas or Florida, but I mean, you can go back and you'll find random, like this person was rated like 28th or 30th in Ohio or whatever. That's another thing Ryan Day said is like, they need to do a better job of evaluating. Like they need to be more focused on evaluating, because in the past, what do you say? We're kind of almost just collecting because they know they can get certain guys. And so you just fill up with the guys that you can get that are good. But it's also like, well, the reason the Big Ten and some Big Ten schools, like when they have their good years, it's generally because, some Ohio guys develop late, and, Michigan State, when they're at their best, they've got good Ohio guys. Michigan, when they're at their best, they have good Ohio guys. And you can say that for any Big Ten team or Kentucky. And a lot of those guys can play at Ohio State. So you have to evaluate better. I mean, you guys remember, Steve, you remember when Urban would get mad that so mad that Chris Borland was at Wisconsin and he wasn't at Ohio State. Never mind that, only one, Wisconsin was the only program that offered him a scholarship. Like, how do these people get out of Ohio? And it's like, you wouldn't have offered him. That 2012 class was loaded with Ohio guys that Urban Meyer would have never offered. Like, if he would have came in, like a year later, he'd be like, why are we playing against Pat Elflein? It's like, you would have never offered Pat Elflein. So this gives them an opportunity to offer more and take more of those developmental guys and build something with them. And then when they are ready to play, they're kind of veteran and they've been around and they can continue to pass on the culture.
Yeah. Ohio has always been kind of, where you start and you branch out from there, kind of concentric circles out from there to Pittsburgh, to Detroit, to Chicago, Indianapolis, Kentucky, et cetera, to go and find high school talent. And, some people, it kind of comes and goes, will say, oh, Ohio State's abandoned Ohio. But, you look at the starters for, the national championship game, about over half of them were from outside the state of Ohio, I believe. So it was not an Ohio, rich type team. It was probably about 50-50. So, I see both sides of it. I guess if you want to compete at the national level, you need the best of the best. But at the same time, you do need to be rooted in the state of Ohio, and you definitely have to get the best players in the state of Ohio and get them to stay at home. No question about it. I think that is particularly when, they're guys that can help you win, no doubt about it.
Sounds like Urban Meyer had nothing to do with the second-tier player in the state of Ohio unless he went elsewhere and then became a first-tier player, and then suddenly it was a problem.
Hey, that's the fault of the assistant coaches. They're the ones that are supposed to know which guys to target and recruit. So that always falls back on the assistant coach.
All right, folks, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. It's Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And so make that part of your week, and certainly watch the replay if you can't get here on time. And also the audio is available on your favorite audio platform. Tony, what's going on at Buckeye Huddle and with the Buckeye Weekly podcast?
Well, the latest edition of the Buckeye Weekly podcast was a live show we did when the news dropped that Jesse Minter and Steve Klinkscale, the Michigan assistants, had settled and taken their punishment from the NCAA. So we were going to do a 20-minute live show, and it turned into about an hour and 20 minutes. And there are like 3,400 people online just wanting more and more because, Mark, as you know, people love to talk about Michigan's issues, especially Ohio State fans. But we also always have plenty of Michigan fans in there when stuff like that goes. But I just dropped a notebook at BuckeyeHuddle.com based on some of the stuff that Brian Day was talking about yesterday, and we'll have more from that. And I've still got a bunch of player features that I need to write from this spring. That there's just not enough time in the course of the spring to get those stories written. So you can find all of that at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And, of course, Buckeye Weekly is wherever your podcasts are sold.
Steve, what's going on with you?
Trying to wrap up the month of April on a high note. And I agree with Tony. I've still got a list of, some of the better players on this Ohio State team that have some interesting angles and different thoughts and different things that we want to get out there. And obviously, the month of May is kind of a quiet month. The coaches are out on the road recruiting. There's not much going on. We probably won't be on campus a whole lot. We were there yesterday for Coach Day's press conference. We're hoping to get the assistant coaches at some point. Jerry Emig, the SID, said there may be instead an opportunity to talk to a few of the players, including the quarterbacks, potentially at the end of spring football, which would be kind of insightful, I suppose. But to catch those assistant coaches is kind of hard this month because they're out on the road Monday through Friday. And you might catch them on a Friday afternoon back on campus or, whatever. My brother-in-law was actually on a flight with one of the head coaches going to the West Coast. So, that'll just tell you how far-flung this recruiting operation that they have really is and how important it is for them to get out and see the top players in states where they can have spring football. And obviously during this observation period and contact period, go out and meet with them and their parents and their high school coach and everybody associated with them to kind of get the full picture of these guys. So, yeah, I'm excited about where we're headed here with this, and gonna take some R&R hopefully here in the month of May. Plan to go to Myrtle Beach for a few days, and otherwise we'll be here hard on it, I guess.
You can make a difference here at the Voice of College Football. Use the Amazon link. Financially contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Same shopping experience. It's easy. Go to any video on any channel. Go to the description section and grab the link right next to the capital letters that say Amazon. Use that link and Amazon will instantaneously convert to your account, settings, history, everything intact, just like whatever link you use right now. No difference. Pay no attention to the product that you see right there. Just go search what you want. Don't forget the Amazon link. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, the Voice of College Football. So while everyone was fascinated with Shedeur Sanders' plummet to the Cleveland Browns and the curious double selection of quarterbacks there, Dylan Gabriel kind of being the anti-Shedeur Sanders, and then they turn around and grab Shedeur Sanders. I'm sure Steve has thoughts on that. We will.
I will say this: if we, as in the Cleveland Browns, are getting the Dylan Gabriel who played Ohio State in Eugene, Oregon, then so be it. He didn't have a chance in the Rose Bowl. They just kind of caved Oregon in. The top-ranked team had no chance, which is kind of crazy. But Dylan Gabriel just kind of sliced and diced Ohio State in that game, and then he ran for a touchdown as well. So I know he's not the biggest guy in the world, but, so be it. The Shedeur thing, I agree with what everybody else has said. You made your bed with the one big story, the Giants. He didn't want to play nice with them during the interview and design plays or draw plays up on the thing. didn't want to sit still for that. And it's kind of like, well, then don't expect us to invest 20, 30, $40 million in you. If you can't take the time to show us that you're up to being QB1 in the National Football League, then piss on you. We're not going to draft you. So he found out the hard way. 32 teams for 4 rounds. That was their stance. The Browns got a steal in round 5. And now we'll see how he assimilates to the National Football League. And, of course, they got Flacco and they've got Pickett as well. And Deshaun, although I don't think Watson's ever going to play another down for the Browns, I think they're just going to let that contract toll out, this year and maybe drop him after this year if it's not such a bad cap hit or whatever. Again, I'm not a capologist, so I don't know all that stuff frontward and backward. But, I just look at it that, no one's expecting the Browns to do anything this year. So, anything they do, I guess, is extra gravy this year. But perhaps either Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders is their quarterback of the future, and they'll get down to it and find out if either of them has that kind of potential here over the next few months.
My confusion with the pick is they've got 3 guys that are already quarterbacks on the team, and where I don't know, is Deshaun Watson, is he like not even dressing for this? Because one of their quarterbacks is going to have to be cut, whether it's one of the 2 guys you drafted or one of the 3 guys that you signed, whether it's Kenny Pickett or Joe Flacco or Deshaun Watson. They're not cutting Watson. So are they going to cut Dylan Gabriel, who they just wasted a 3rd-round pick on? So I think the amount of shock from the Dylan Gabriel pick, like you could even hear it on the ESPN broadcast when they said it, and you hear like gasps. And then you talk to other people like who have their own draft boards, and that was much higher. And then it becomes a much worse pick when you take Shedeur Sanders after that, because you've just, why grab Gabriel in the 3rd at that point? And I don't know why they thought they had to, for one. I don't know that anybody was going to take him in the 3rd. I don't see him as a starting quarterback in the NFL, but there's nobody that is actually ever consistently right about quarterbacks. So, I get who is anybody to criticize anybody for anybody's draft of quarterbacks, really?
Yeah, you don't know. I think there was a stat out there that there were no starting quarterbacks in the league that this year that were taken after the 3rd round in any draft. So it is kind of a science that they do have to have a draft pedigree to be an NFL starting quarterback, or at least in this phase of the NFL they do. So
Steve, so the Browns thought if they would take a 5th-round quarterback in the 3rd round, that meant he would be qualified to start. That's the Browns thinking. Like, well, we can't wait until the 5th round because he's not going to be able to start. So let's grab that 5th rounder in the 3rd round. Yeah. That way he'll be good enough to start by us taking him that early. Therefore, we have grandfathered him into this rule.
Yeah, my guess is they'll disable Watson, and he won't play all year because he's coming back from Achilles. And then probably cut one of the veterans and probably keep 2 rookies is what I would think, because, they have a higher upside. Everybody knows what Kenny Pickett is now. Everybody knows what, Flacco, this is probably his absolute last season. So, I don't know. Or you could cut Flacco, I guess, if you think Pickett is good enough to start, I suppose. But, I don't know. I'm not really worried about it. They got Quinshon Judkins, which I thought was a great pick. It seems like Chubb is on his way out. Need to replace him, although I don't know that Judkins is going to be, as great a running back at the NFL level as Chubb was. And then Mason Graham up front at defensive tackle to kind of set the tone for your defense. I love the trade down from the 2 pick. You could take Travis Hunter with the 2 pick and hope, that you get something out of it. But he wasn't the best cornerback and he wasn't the best wide receiver, on the board. But, combine it as a football player that you could get value out of. And as a return guy, they had a hybrid guy, Jabril Peppers, a few years ago, and it didn't work out. So I don't know what the thinking was there, but I liked it. And they've got, my God, they moved down three. If this was all they got, they moved down 3 spots in the first round. Still got a really good player in Mason Graham. Flipped some other picks to improve spots, and they got the Jaguars' first-round pick next year, which, as I was crowing about as this was going on, that's guaranteed to be a top 10, if not a top 5 pick, because the Jaguars are terrible always. But he said, well, you never know. They could pop off and win 9 games. And I was like, they never have. I mean, why would they start now? And I know I'm being facetious. Didn't they make an AFC championship game one time way back? But, if we know, Tony, you and I know, if there's one thing the Khan family can't do, it's promote wrestling or put together an NFL franchise. So
I think it's unfortunate for the Browns because I don't like any of the quarterbacks in the 2026 draft in the top 5 where, that's where they're going to go. And you've got 2 first-rounders that you could package to go up there. So I don't even know that there's a franchise quarterback in next year's draft. I have to watch some college football this year to see that. But like of the names, like Carson Beck does nothing for me. And, I don't think anybody really does anything. Arch Manning does nothing for me at this point. I want to see him play for a whole season. I'm not just going to buy into him like so many other people are. I need to see some things before I think there's a franchise quarterback out there worth a top 5, top 1 pick.
Yep.
Yeah, well, the logistics of the trade were exceptional, but then you have to execute the picks. So that's been the Browns' problem. It almost reminds me of the Johnny Manziel logistics in getting Johnny Manziel almost 10 years ago, in which there were
la. We hit the trifecta: Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, and Shedeur Sanders. So yeah, we hit the trifecta.
Baker Mayfield, hey, they should have held on to him.
Well, hindsight is now definitely 2020 on that.
Competent NFL.
The Browns never surrounded him with anything that that he could win with. That was the problem there. But they've been much better. I mean, they did beat the Steelers in a playoff game with him, but for whatever reason they couldn't stay up there after that. So it just it is what it is, I guess.
The Browns would have been better off making Brian Hoyer their starter than just Deshaun Watson.
Anybody.
The point about Manziel is that there were teams supposedly out there that would have drafted him high, or they didn't. Obviously, he slipped through the first round, but they were able to get a guy that some people thought was a top 5 or 10 pick. They traded down. They still got him at the beginning of the second round, got a top cornerback who obviously didn't work out in Justin Gilbert. But so they didn't execute the picks, but they got the picks. It was a good trade. They just didn't execute the picks.
Yeah.
So they got to execute the picks. And I don't know that Mason Graham, I think he's got a high floor. I think he's going to be a competent player, but I don't know that he's the number 5 pick in the NFL draft.
As for the Browns' execution, I'm all for it. So.
As John McKay once famously said.
Yep.
All right. All right, folks, we appreciate you being here. Any comments or questions out there, we'll pick them up. Otherwise, I don't necessarily know there's anything else I need to hit from the Ryan Day news conference. There's a few tidbits here and there. Anything you guys thought was interesting?
Well, and this is something I said afterwards after the show is like how the House case can be boring to a lot of people, and the whole roster number can be boring to a lot of people. But the 4 guys that Ohio State did lose in the transfer portal were all walk-ons, and these are guys that Ryan Day had to say, I don't know if we'll have a spot for you in the fall because of the way the roster situation is going. And so those guys had to jump into the portal, but now it's looking like had they not, there would have been a spot for him. But like he had to be honest with them. You don't want to go into the fall camp and say, now I don't have a spot for you, and those guys have nowhere to go. So I just thought that's an interesting real life example of how everything going on with the NCAA right now is affecting people. And it's they're just walk-ons, but these are guys that had decided to leave Ohio State and go somewhere else. And now, as it turns out, they probably wouldn't have had to do that, but they didn't know that. Nobody knew that at the time. And you've got to, you've got to get into the portal. Now, I don't know how many of those people have ended up anywhere, so they could certainly come back at this point if they wanted to, if there was more clarification on what the roster is going to be.
Yeah, it sounds like the judge is a little hinky about going with a hard and fast 105 out of nowhere. And some people have surmised that she may opt for a phasing in over time of lowering that number down to the 105. As part of the revenue share, they are doing away in some regard with scholarship limits. And Ohio State will probably have 90 players on full scholarship is what Coach Day said. And those 5 scholarships come out of that 20 million, the way I understand it. So that's going to be part of the 20 million will go to 5 new scholarships for football. We'll see if basketball is able to exceed 13. Their roster limit is supposed to be 15, I think. But we'll see, how that all shakes out. But it doesn't seem like 105 is going to be the number for this year. It could be 115 or 110. Or if you can't put a 22-man football team on the field with 105 guys, then I don't know what to do for you. I just the NFL does it with 53. So, I'm not sure why we need double that to do a college football team, but so be it. From yesterday, he loves the depth at running back. James Peoples still a little bit untested against contact. They really didn't ever tackle him to the ground, but thought he had a great spring. Loves the depth at tight end with Max Clare joining the group, to go with all the guys that are coming back except for G. Scott Jr. He made a comment that he couldn't believe Seth McLaughlin wasn't drafted. Had McLaughlin been drafted as he should have been, then that would have tied the Georgia record with 15 in one 7-round draft. Ohio State tied its own school record with 14 in one 7-round draft with this draft this past week. And McLaughlin did latch on with the Bengals as an undrafted free agent. G. Scott Jr., I think, is he New England? Does that sound right? And Fryer is somewhere as a undrafted free agent as well. So those 3 guys plus the 14 drafted will all be in camps and mini camps and whatever it is that they do from this point until the first game. So another great haul for Ohio State, and they had more people drafted in this draft than anybody. They set a school record for 7 players taken over the first 2 rounds, 4 in the first round, and 3 more in the second. And I think it was a surprise. I thought we were all going to go to bed on Thursday night with 2 guys in the first round with Agbuka and Donovan Jackson. And then it was Tyleik Williams kind of snuck into the first round. And so did Josh Jimmy Simmons as well. There's the last pick of the first round. It kind of went boom, boom there at the end. And everybody went to bed, with sugar plums in their dreams because it was 4 Buckeyes taken in the first round, which as God intended it. So there you go.
And Ohio State extended its first round lead all time over USC, which was shut out of the first round and actually had one of the lowest counts in the Big Ten. Northwestern was the only school in the Big Ten without a draftee.
Yeah.
But USC only had 3, none in the first round. So 95-86 is the lead for Ohio State over USC all time.
Just keeps getting better, doesn't it? Just keeps getting better.
Yeah. I think the day before the draft, me and our buddy Kevin Noon did a show where I set the over-under on first-round draft picks for this year at 2.5 and for next year at 2.5. I went under this year. He went under as well, but changed his mind after the show, which shouldn't count. That's not canon. But I also went under for next year. Caleb Downs is definitely going to be a first rounder, but you'd have to be like somebody like Sonny Styles, who's going to have all of the measurables and do outstanding at the combine. But linebackers aren't always coveted. I mean, James Laurinaitis was a second rounder. Chris Spielman was a second rounder. even though Spielman would have been a first rounder with the additional teams that are in the NFL now. But can Kenyatta Jackson get there? Davis Nigbenosin, Jermaine Matthews, or Ethan Onianwa? There's some options, but I don't think anybody's a sure. Carnell Tate is the other guy. I've seen him popping up in mock drafts. But can they get to 3? There's going to be enough people there. I was a little surprised because I'm this year that there were more than 2 because I'm usually overestimating Ohio State players because that's who I see constantly. And then to see 4 go, I was a little surprised just because surely nobody thinks as highly of these guys as Tyleik Williams as I do. And it was a surprise to see Josh Simmons go so low when for the longest time he was the guy that everybody was saying was going to go first among the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I've seen a few mock drafts for next year, and Downs is obviously, in fact, I saw one where he was in the top 5 or top 10. I'm not sure who else from Ohio State right now I would have a first round grade presently. Maybe Styles, but it would have to be late. I don't even know. I'm just not sure.
Carnell Tate is projection. Like a lot of these guys are projections. I know some people said Ethan Onion was going to be a second rounder. I'm like, I don't, you could say that, but would he have been? And so, he could certainly be up there this year, but these are all projections. Like Carnell Tate or Caleb Downs is the only guy. Like I was told after his freshman year when he transferred, like he would have been a top 10 pick that year, but he's the only for sure guy right now.
And of course, we continue the trend of a 2-conference sport as the Big Ten trailed the SEC 79-71. Then you drop all the way down to the ACC with 42, 26 of 32 from the SEC and the Big Ten in the first round, 26 of 32.
Wow, that's crazy. Speaking industry-wide, I saw some tweets that there is starting to gain some traction on taking all the Olympic sports back to regionalization. And, there'll be no more, quote unquote, SEC, ACC baseball or whatever. It would just be, however you would structure it. And I think that the people are realizing we're needlessly spending millions and millions and millions of dollars sending the Stanford baseball team to go play North Carolina and the Ohio State tennis team to go play UCLA, and just complete abject stupidity. Nobody even shows up to watch that stuff. Hardly any of it's televised, and just flat out nobody cares. So if nobody cares, there's no reason to do it, at least on a national stage. So hopefully the conferences can get together and hammer out a plan to save themselves about $1 billion by doing away with nationwide Olympic sports. That just makes no sense. I mean, you have a national tournament at the end, obviously, but there's no reason why it's not regionalized. Just carve the nation. Do it like the OHSAA does with districts. Plot it out on a map and say, okay, there's 35 here, 35 there, 35 here, 35 there, and those are the 4 regions, and that's how you do it. So that's what I'm looking for from an industry standpoint, is in the foolishness of nationwide Olympic sports.
Speaking of the SEC, I just saw a tweet from Kirk Bowles, who's a columnist for the Houston Chronicle, talks about the Texas Longhorns. The Texas Longhorns will spend between $35 and $40 million on their football roster for 2025. So is it now time to constantly put that price tag on the Longhorns like they did Ohio State with the $20 million roster? I think $40 million Longhorns, now you've got to go win a championship, spending twice as much money as it's ever been spent before, even though basically everybody's going to kind of be around that number because everybody's numbers are doubling with the house settlement and also collectives. So, but still, this is the only team in the nation that is spending $40 million because that's the only one that has a price tag on it.
Mark, can you put my score that I just sent to the private chat? Put that on the screen.
Here you are.
Don't put the entire private chat on the screen.
No, just
copy and paste. Give me a second.
All right. On the fly. We're
If
doing
it'll
it
work.
live.
I didn't know what we were doing here, Steve.
There it is. Week 1.
Ooh, a beatdown of sorts.
Hey, they beat them by 14 in Texas. So, why not put a star by that? I know, but yeah.
1 yard away from a tie game.
Oh my God.
3 minutes left. I just watched that sequence like 2 days ago.
You just can't even conjure. I mean, and if Sark gets a wild hair up his ass and decides, why don't we go for 2 here and just end this thing right here and beat Ohio State right here on this 2-point conversion? And he would have had something special cooked up too. So
after they got outplayed the whole game.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just had a foreboding feeling that Ohio State is just letting these guys hang around to steal it at the end. And, I wasn't entirely sold on them as the, quote, team of destiny. Well, I was after the Oregon game for sure. But, man, they played like dog crap for the first 4 quarters of the Texas game. So, I don't know.
The first 59 minutes.
First 58 minutes of the Texas game were a disaster. But, hey, all's well that ends well.
Well, that's how good they were, because I think that Texas team was probably the second best team in the country.
And,
Probably.
in terms of yours, I'm not sure what the problem was in that game. I was down the field taking pictures from behind him, and it was just one pass in the dirt after another, one missed receiver after another. I just didn't feel like he gave them a chance to win that game at all. I just didn't. And maybe it was breakdowns around him that were causing him to not play well. But if I was their coaches, I had to be sitting there scratching my head like, this guy is killing us, But that was me just watching it from the field. Maybe from the high view, you could tell that the guards and the tackles weren't doing their job, or the receivers were, covered, or I don't know, but I haven't really studied it. But I just didn't feel like he played very well.
Guys, we know that Sawyer made the play before the play when he forced Ewers and tipped the ball when he was on the pass rush right in his face. But wasn't it 2 plays before that when they drove the running back wide and threw him for like a 5-yard loss? Wasn't that Sawyer too?
Well, that was initially Downs, and then Lathan Ransom, because they tossed left, and Downs got in there and pushed him back even more, and then Lathan Ransom cleaned him up for a 7-yard loss on 2nd and 1, which is just devastating.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and really watch the play, but Ohio State set the edge really well. Like, he wasn't going to be able to turn it upfield, maybe as early as he wanted to, and he got strung out. And as I think Downs read it, from the snap, that maybe he knew a key that this is what they do down on the goal line, is this wide toss. And he shot the gap, and he went in unblocked. They didn't have an answer for him. And he makes the play. What they talk about, is making the tackle. He made the play. He's the one that if he doesn't do what he did, it probably turns out a little bit different. But as Tony said, Ransom was also there on the spot to help clean up. And man, that play goes unheralded just because of what happened a few plays later with the Sawyer play. But that was a great, that was like whatever the number was, the 7th, 8th, 9th time a team got inside the 10 or 5-yard line and didn't score, against Ohio State, just period, flat out did not score. And, that includes some missed field goals and turnovers on the red zone, and, goal line stops, like Penn State was a goal line stop. And, there were some other ones. So, yeah, I mean, it was crazy.
Epic. Steve, I hate to spoil your 1 versus 2 matchup, but don't be surprised if our buddy James Franklin slices in there somewhere around 1 to 3.
Okay.
Maybe he splits in there. A lot of people this year.
That poor guy, he had somebody calling him at the freaking spring game again. I mean, somebody called him a fraud or something down there. That gate they have down there, I mean, he's always milling around that gate, yapping at fans. It's like, bro, put some earplugs in and just chuck on out to the field. I mean, this guy is the number 2 coach. And I don't know, that Rip guy before Paterno was probably pretty good too, but he's the number 2 coach in the history of the school. And I don't know. I just cut the guy some slack, for God's sake. You know, they should give that guy a lifetime contract is what I think they really should do. I think he had him in the Final Four, for God's sake. I mean, is that not sacred? Does that not mean anything?
And their road was tougher than anybody else's.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, we got to pump that guy up with all of our ability. We've got to pump that guy up.
Here you go, Steve. So Rip Engel was 104, 48, and 4 in his 16 years. Right now, James Franklin is 101 and 42. So
yeah,
he's got a better winning percentage than Rip Engel. He's still a little bit below Joe Paterno's 75%, though.
He's going to move past him in career wins, certainly this year. And, I know I'm being facetious and tongue in cheek on a lot of this, but perspective is important. I mean, if this was 20 years ago, Penn State would have 5 Big Ten championships on the wall probably, but it's not 20 or 30 years ago. This is, a new era and a new time where you've got to win the extra game, and you got this playoff hanging over everybody's head at the end. But for them to break through and get to, regardless of who they played, for them to break through and get to the Final Four of the playoff and beat Georgia along the way, who a lot of people thought was the best team. Granted their quarterback was down, but or they didn't beat Georgia. Notre Dame beat Georgia, but to be right there, and probably should have beaten Notre Dame, I guess, in the Final Four. Could have beaten them, but whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah, we shall see. They are locked and loaded this year. This should be their year if there's going to be one. All right, folks, we appreciate you being here. Make it on back next Wednesday. In the meantime, you got Tony at BuckeyeHuddle.com and the Buckeye Weekly Podcast, and, of course, Steve at Bucknuts. So lock it in right there, and we'll see you next time.